The California legislature will have a new speaker. Lawmakers from the Democratic caucus chose Assemblyman Robert Rivas to replace Anthony Rendon, who's been speaker for the last 6 years. Daniela Pardo has more on Rivas, who will become the first legislator from rural California to hold the most powerful seat in the state assembly.
He's a grandson of immigrant farm workers, a father, husband, and come late June, Assemblyman Robert Rivas will be the next speaker of the California State Assembly.
If I was, told as a kid that I, one day represent, my home, this region, the state legislature, I wouldn't have thought it possible because I grew up in poverty.
The Central Coast lawmaker spent the first 10 years of his life in crowded farm worker housing. His late grandpa, Servando Flores, was an immigrant from Mexico who Rivas credits for instilling in him the value of hard work.
He provided for our families so that way we wouldn't have to work in the fields, and he wanted us to make the most of these opportunities.
Rivas shares his grandpa stood side by side with civil rights icons Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta to advocate for farm workers' rights. Huerta remembers helping Rivas' grandpa negotiate his first labor contract. She's now a strong supporter of his grandson.
When you have somebody that comes from the grassroots, that comes from a farm worker family, and then ascends to be a leader in the state assembly, I mean, this is what we talk about, the American dream. This is the American dream.
Huerta adds having someone with Rivas' background as the next speaker will not only benefit farm worker families.
We know he's a leader in education. He's a leader on the environment. So Rob's, he doesn't just speak for farm workers, he speaks for everybody in the state of California. Is a very progressive voice.
During his first 4 years in the assembly, Rivas served as chair of the Agriculture Committee and vice chair of the Latino caucus.
Representation matters. This is the time when we need leaders that aren't just going to say the right things, they're going to do the right things.
During a recent visit at the Carpenters Training Center in his district, Rivas spoke to students about one of his bills the governor signed to increase housing production by speeding up the permitting process.
We need a workforce that's going to meet the demand to build the housing that we need.
Prior to getting elected to the assembly to represent the 30th district, which include the cities of Gilroy, Salinas, and Watsonville, Rivas was on the San Benito County Board of Supervisors.
Having spent my 8 years in local government, obviously bringing people together is something I do well, is always looking to build consensus on any number of issues.
He looks forward to bringing that same kind of leadership when he becomes speaker.
And I'm so thankful that my colleagues have entrusted me with this opportunity.
An opportunity he never would have imagined as a kid who grew up struggling with a severe stutter.
I work very hard to overcome those challenges that exist when I speak, and that's why I never ever anticipated that this was going to be a career path for me, just because of my fear of public speaking. But certainly this has been the most rewarding experience of my life.
While Rivas is excited to continue advocating for his constituents at the state capitol, he says his focus when he becomes the assembly's leader is to unify the caucus and uplift the needs of all Californians.
And this is a treat. Daniela Pardo joins us live tonight in studio. It's good to have you here.
So good to be here, Ariel.
So tell us what kind of influence the speaker has in Sacramento and why this is such a sought-after position.
Absolutely. So the assembly speaker is the most influential assembly member that you have at the Capitol. They're very influential, along with the governor, of course, and the Senate pro tem. And they're the ones that are in charge of assigning different members to the various committees that exist. And there's very powerful committees such as the Appropriations Committee, Public Safety. They also work directly with the governor and the leader of the Senate in overseeing the state budget. And they have a lot of say over what comes and what goes.
Now, I understand that the process as well for Rivas to take over next year, not exactly the smoothest, a little messy perhaps. Can you kind of get us up to speed on what it took for the assembly members to pick a new speaker?
Yes. So Speaker Anthony Rendon has been speaker for the last 6.5 years. He's from the Paramount, Lakewood area. Once he's done, he'll be one of the speakers that have served in that position for the longest. By the end of his time, he'll be speaker for 7 years. And there's only 2 other people that have had that position for that long. So this all started 6 months ago on the Friday before Memorial Day, when Robert Rivas announced that he had enough votes to become speaker. And it was the ultimate cliffhanger after a 3-day weekend. So when lawmakers got back to the Capitol after Memorial Day, they all met, and they met for 6 hours behind closed doors. So we don't exactly know what was said, but we do know know that they decided that Rendon would stay Speaker until the end of the legislative session, and they would meet again after the election. So fast forward to next Thursday, or last Thursday rather, and they met again at the Sacramento Convention Center. They invited a lot of the incoming members, and they again met for 6 hours, and that's when they ultimately came to the agreement that Robert Rivas would officially take over on June 30th, and he would work with Rendon closely over the next few months in that transition of power and just making sure that he's prepared and that things go smoothly. The way that someone described it to me is that last Thursday was the engagement and December 5th is the wedding. That's when all the new members come in, they get sworn in, and they also vote for Rivas to be the Speaker.